Hello. I'm going to try something different for this video. Rather than doing a long, fast motion with a narration over top type of video like I did with the original two tracks, I'm going to try to do a little bit more in depth of what I'm thinking about when I'm building the song and then cut into the different parts of the song as they progress. So for these three songs, for Dessa, 21 Pilots, and Tame Impala, what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get a drum sound that's very roomy, like the very jazzy sound that's in the Dessa track. I'm going to try to mash up the bass lines between the 21 Pilots song and the Tame Impala song. That's my initial thoughts. That's where I'm going to start, and then I'll come back and show you what I've done so far. All right, so I think I figured out a way to meld the two bass lines. The 21 Pilots one, where it's just simple, like. And it changes to a beat part. And the funkier one with the Tame Impala riff would be something like. So if they're both starting on the same note, so, and this is just a octave above, you can go. So if I wanted to keep something similar to the, I think I'm gonna start it like, so instead of just stopping, I'm gonna use that as a transition to go to the next note. So I'm gonna go. All right, now I just need to find some drums to go with it. All right, so I found the drum loop using Addicted Drums. The beat, the only things I changed to it was I eliminated the snare and I took a sample of a brush snare hit and I replaced the snares with that, and it sounds a little something like this. So the next idea I had was to incorporate the lead line from the Dessa track, the little guitar part. I shifted it over to the piano, and where hers goes like, I shifted it over one semitone, so actually a tone and a half. So on the Tame Impala song, right as the beat drops after the small intro, there's a little guitar line that has alternate picking. It goes something like doo-dee doo-da doo-dee doo-da. So I'm going to incorporate that. I'm going to put the piano line that I put all the way on the left side, and then I'm going to incorporate guitar line on the right side. A couple of things have happened. I added some rhythmic elements to either side, some offbeat rim shots to give the track some movement. And I also added a sample of a voice similar to the Chlorine song, where in the background you hear this chlorine, but it's all EQ'd out and really reverby. I also took inspiration from the transition between the chorus and the bridge of Chlorine where they play around with the reverb. If you listen closely, there's a lot of reverb, and then all of a sudden the reverb stops, just a hard stop. So I did that with the sample. So I found a female sample. It says back and forth. I tuned it to the pitch of the song, and I EQ'd it. I added a bunch of reverb, but then at the snare, when the snare hits, all the reverb goes away. I also changed the rhythm of the snare and the kick to match more of a boom bap sound. The way that it was before, it was a lot jazzier, and it wasn't working for me. So I changed the kick and the snare sound as well. All right, so I struggled to find a way to transition into some sort of chorus. So I listened back to the tracks a lot. On the 21 Pilots song, I found that the song pretty much has the same underlying harmony throughout 90% of the track. So I think what I'm going to do is something like that, where the underlying harmony stays the same. So the bass line stays the same, and then it's just trying to find different melodies. It's almost like 21 Pilots wrote 4 or 5 different songs for the same harmony, and then just meshed them together into like A part, B part, C part, which is genius. So I'm gonna try to do that. So the first part is gonna be that like ambient room sound, drum sound. This second part that I'm constructing now is gonna be a little bit more driving, like the beat in the Tame Impala song, but without any of the guitars, just like a sub bass and some warbly pianos. And then I'm gonna keep creating different parts with the similar harmony, and then the struggle is gonna be trying to find different melodies to compose into all these different parts. So here's what I got so far. Couple things you heard in there were the transition from one part to the other with those 1, 2, 3, 4 just on the drums. That comes from the Dessa track where she's in her vocals and all the instrumentation. Everybody does in unison these hits. And so I think she says something like, "There's not too many women in this business that I really like. So everybody chops at the same time. So I'm gonna try to see if I can fit that into that transition part. And then in the 21 Pilot song, there's this really arpeggiated, really fast piano part. So I tried to include that. I very slowly went through some parts of the scale that the song's in, and then I just sped it up to 8 times what I played it at. So it would arpeggiate back and forth within that little transition part. Other than that, it was just that's almost the same bass line, but this time with a synth. And that's all I got so far right now. So at the end of the second part, I added some strings, and I went to Ovox, which is a tool that I use to use my voice as an instrument. And I did a small melody with Ovox included with the strings, and that will carry over to a C part that has a more funky pattern. I also included with that C part a new bass line which I'll show you now, and then I'll also show you at the same time the Ovox part and the strings part. So as you could probably tell, I added the same piano line from the initial A part to that. I think what I'm going to do from now on, I think I'm done with the instrumentation. It's just a matter of arranging now so that it's not just A part, B part, C part. It's all of them intermingled, and then trying to find some melodies that intertwine within each other. So it's not a verse, chorus, bridge. It's just different melodies and different parts interplaying with each other. Let's see what happens. So I might have lied. While I was arranging, I ended up messing around with the chords in the warbly piano part for an outro. It called for a different melody with the strings, so I wrote a separate string part for the outro, and then I spent some time arranging and rearranging and mixing and matching instrumentation from each individual part so that they would weave in and out of each part. I think all the instrumentation's done and all the arranging is done. Now the most important thing is going to be coming up with a whole bunch of melodies so that they can intertwine within the track. Alright, so I think I found at least 4 or 5 different melodies. And I have somewhat of an idea, so I mumbled them all throughout the track as references. I'm still gonna do the going through the lyrics of the 3 original songs and pick out words and phrases like I did with the first 2 episodes. However, since I used that sample that says back and forth while I was humming along with the track, I think I'm gonna use that back and forth in there somewhere. A line came to me that says, back and forth we go like swing sets on a playground. Onward to writing some lyrics. I went through all the lyrics for all 3 songs and picked out words and phrases that stood out to me. Like I mentioned earlier, I already had some idea of a theme with this sample that says back and forth, and that line, we go back and forth like swing sets on a playground. That evokes to me a feeling of an on and off couple that keeps getting back together and then separating and then getting back together. So I was looking not just for lines that stood out for the sake of them standing out, but this time I had that initial feeling in mind. So the words and phrases I picked out had an intention of trying to fit in with that sort of thematic. Here's a listing of all the words that I ended up with. The subtracted lines are the ones that I ended up using within the lyrics, which were roughly about half of the words and phrases I initially picked out.